Chapter 15. The Snowboarder's Mantra. When I awoke the next morning in the Cave of Enlightenment and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, I noticed three things. The fire had gone out, and I was freezing cold. Master Fwop and the Oracle were nowhere to be seen, and I was still extremely tired from my 4 days of trekking through the Annapurna Himalayas, and probably from my interdimensional skyboarding excursion that had taken place the night before. I got up, slowly dressed, and lit a fire. I had no idea where the Oracle and Master Fwop had gone. I made myself some tea, and, after drinking it, I started to feel a little better. My task then was to decide on my next course of action. I could either hang around the cave, waiting for Master Fwop and the Oracle to return, or I could leave the cave and go looking for them. I opted for a middle path instead. Since I was still pretty tired, I thought I would kick back and read from the Handbook for Enlightenment for a while. And if they still hadn't returned by the time I had finished my reading, I was going to go snowboarding. I searched around in my knapsack until I found the handbook. I thumbed through its pages, randomly looking at various chapter titles, searching for something that I might find interesting. After a few minutes, I found a section titled, "The Ordinary and the Extraordinary Methods." That sounded intriguing. O nobly born, listen well. There are two correct types of methods and means for the attainment of the all-blissful state of enlightenment, the ordinary and the extraordinary methods. The ordinary methods are those revealed by enlightened masters in their preliminary instructions. In the case of Lord Buddha, these were the sutras. The sutras outline correct meditation, attitude, intent, mindfulness, and a general introduction to the basics of Buddhist cosmology. The ordinary methods also include Buddha's second cycle of teachings, the later sutras and the early tantras. Here, more advanced methods of meditation, attitude, mindfulness, and an intermediate explanation of Buddhist cosmology are provided. There is some overlap between some of the teachings in Buddha's second cycle of the sutras and the extremely advanced teachings in his third and final cycle of tantric teachings. While scholars and pundits may argue as to whether his second cycle of teachings were sutras or tantras, this is not our concern, for we are not interested in what the teachings are called, as revealed by Lord Buddha, Lord Milarepa, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, Atisha, Lord Krishna, Bodhidharma, Lao Tzu, Tilopa, Naropa, or lesser-known enlightened ones. Nor is our goal to place in competition with each other the systems of Mahayana, Hinayana, Zen, Vajrayana, or other forms of Buddhist, Hindu, or Taoist yoga and Buddhism. The point of the practice, as outlined in this book, is twofold. 1. After grasping and training oneself in the preliminary methods, to attain the transference of consciousness, which concludes with the great awakening to the clear light of reality, the Dharmakaya, complete enlightenment, the realization of the one without a second. 2. The training to become a Mahasiddha, with the realization that this training, while essentially void in nature, as all training and attainments truly are, allows the practitioner to avoid the trap of limiting the experience of the clear light of reality to the supraconscious realms. It is only the Mahasiddha, who is a pure living mandala, embodying the realization by his existence in all of the worlds, that samsara is nirvana. As Saraha has correctly expressed, those fortunate ones who attain the knowledge that from the beginning of endless time mind has never existed, realize the mind of the Buddhas of the three eras. The 84 Mahasiddhas. Since the ordinary means of the Buddha's first two cycles of teaching have already been expounded upon in the previous chapters of this handbook, and in countless other commentaries and texts, it is the particular point of the last third of the Handbook for Enlightenment to transmit to you the extraordinary means by which the 84 recognized Mahasiddhas attained enlightenment. Know that it was through a blending of both the ordinary means of attainment, which have been previously expounded upon both in this text and in other works, and through the extraordinary means, which follow this introduction, that the Mahasiddhas transformed their impurities into perfections and went beyond the limitations of their perfections to full realization of the inherent emptiness and enlightenment of all. The 84 Mahasiddhas should be seen as mandalas. They provide 84 different pathways to enlightenment. You may choose to study one of them and the methods for attainment, several of them, or all 84 of them. The knowledge of more is not necessarily better than the knowledge of a few, or even of one of them. It is a matter of individual preference. Our concern here is not the quantity of techniques that you come to know, but that you attain the skillful means by which your enlightenment will blossom. Therefore, our approach will not be to look at the 84 Mahasiddhas individually. Elsewhere in Tantric Buddhist texts, their lives and songs have been amply recorded. While it is recommended that you have a general knowledge of all 84 of their lives, methods, and songs, what is most important is that you then choose one of the 84 whom you find most appealing, or whose circumstances before their realization most resemble your current situation in life, and make that particular Mahasiddha your tantric root guru and the focus of your study and practice. Naturally, if you have the priceless opportunity of now studying with a fully enlightened tantric root guru who is still embodied, his or her instructions will supersede these words. But the best remedy for the illness of illusion is to employ two medicines: the medicine of your current enlightened teacher's knowledge, and also the methods revealed in this book that have been used with great success by past enlightened beings, with a particular focus on the 84 Mahasiddhas. If your karma has not led you to an encounter with a fully awakened one in your current lifetime, then use this guide, coupled with the understandings of past cycle awakened ones and the 84 Mahasiddhas. Make sure to choose one of the 84 Mahasiddhas to be your personal mandala. Synchronize your vibration with his aura by repeated study of his life and songs. Meditate upon him, and he will aid you from the other dimensions in your attainment of the emptiness of enlightenment. May your path be filled with joy. The syntheses of the 84 Mahasiddhas' teachings. It is apparent that the 84 Mahasiddhas all had one thing in common. They practiced the advanced third cycle teachings of Lord Buddha, in which extremely unfortunate circumstances that an individual finds himself in, and that would normally make enlightenment impossible, are completely reversed into a state of total enlightenment. These are the extraordinary means and methods. To take what on the surface appear to be impossible circumstances and events that would ordinarily prevent an incarnate being from any attainment whatsoever, and turn those events and circumstances into the springboard to enlightenment. All 84 of the Mahasiddhas distinguished themselves through the use of their siddhas as visible proof that they were embodiments of enlightened consciousness. In each of their cases, their lives were filled with myriad misfortunes that should have made the attainment of enlightenment impossible. Their attainment proved that Buddha's third cycle of tantric teachings and methods clearly works. They are intended for use only when the ordinary practices are not sufficient to create enlightenment in one's current life circumstances, and they should be employed only after you have fully mastered the ordinary methods that are revealed in the sutras of Buddha's first and second cycle teachings. All 84 of these great masters of the Vajrayana did not follow the usual monastic methods of practice as elaborated upon in the sutras. While they came from different ranks and castes of society, while they were both women and men, while some were rich and some poor, some educated and some ignorant of reading and writing, all shared one thing in common, which is the essence of all tantric practice. They were able to turn, in each of their cases, a devastating crisis in their lives into the very means by which they attained the knowledge of the great symbol of total liberation from all limited states of mind. Intensive study and practice of the advanced tantras will provide you with the means of taking all of the situations that you now see as blocking your practice and turn them into the actual stepping stones by which you will attain the great realization of nirvana. In short, The inestimable worth and also the proof of the effectiveness of the tantric teachings is that they can turn lead into gold. When properly understood and practiced, they can help you utilize any real-life situation, no matter how difficult, for proper attainment of enlightenment. One might say that the Tantras show you how to make each seemingly impossible situation in your day-to-day life a monastery in which you can attain total liberation. How wonderful! All earthly experiences can lead to enlightenment when properly employed. This is the essence of the tantric practices. As Padmasambhava declared upon being exiled from Tibet, "The entire world has now become my monastery." So, in conclusion, study the following extraordinary methods of the Tantras with great diligence. They will provide the skillful means by which you can transform even the most mundane events in your daily life into the pathway to enlightenment. And even in ultimate crisis, their worth, and the worth of Lord Buddha's final cycle of teachings, is therefore proved beyond doubt. In times when many would say that the attainment of enlightenment was impossible because of circumstances, the proper employment of the Vajrayana Tantra created liberation for the 84 Mahasiddhas, as it can for you. May your journey through the extraordinary means and methods of the Tantras reveal the hidden pathway to enlightenment to you. May all sentient beings attain full liberation. At this point, I was maxed out on Buddhist wisdom. I carefully placed the book into my knapsack, stood up, and stretched. Neither Master Phwap nor the Oracle had returned to the cave, so I decided that it was time to go snowboarding. After leaving the Cave of Enlightenment with my snowboarding gear strapped on my back, I found the narrow path that Master Phwap had led us down the previous evening and followed it back up to the main trail. From there, I reascended the pass, and then I started to climb a peak. It took me about 2 hours to get to the top. When I got there, I was breathless, covered with sweat, and very happy to have made it. I guesstimated that I was at around 18,000 feet. Looking down, I could see that this run was definitely going to be the most extreme vertical snowboarding I had ever attempted. But I was so pumped up from sky surfing the dimensions with Master Phwap and the Oracle that I had a feeling of invulnerability, at least at first. After changing my boots, I decided to check out my bindings. I make it a rule of thumb, whenever I do backcountry boarding, always to carry wax, a screwdriver, a stone, ticket wickets, a flashlight, a lighter, and a simple first aid kit. Using my screwdriver, I tightened the screws on my bindings. Then I used a little hill wax on some dry spots on my board. I employed the ticket wickets to knock out some little chunks of ice that had collected on my board, and ignored the stone, hoping I would be able to keep on doing so. My stone was only for emergency cut-downs, if I shredded my board on some rocks going down, and had to shave some slivers off of it. When I was confident that my gear was in order, I then checked out my mental state. As I have learned through experience, success in extreme snowboarding, as in most other high-performance athletic sports, is more dependent on your state of mind than anything else. Naturally, it is a given that once you are into high-performance sports, you will always keep your body in top shape and will constantly practice and improve your technique. Your mind is a different matter. That is why most snowboarders eventually level out in their evolution in the sport. At a certain point in your snowboarding career, once you have mastered all of the basic, intermediate, and advanced methods, except for the latest trick riding techniques, there's really nothing new to learn. This is the time when most people who have been heavily involved in the sport start to get bored or frustrated with snowboarding. I have never had this problem. For me, snowboarding, after I had gotten the hang of the physical techniques, became a journey inside of my mind. I discovered that at a certain point in my snowboarding career, further advancement depended on constant practice, mental discipline, and creativity. I suppose that is why Master Phwap's ideas about Buddhism initially appealed to me, and still do. His view was that your mind's advancement is ultimately the determining factor in your success, once you know what you are doing. I have talked with a lot of other high-performance athletes about this, both snowboarders and individuals from other athletic disciplines, including martial arts, scuba divers, mountain climbers, triathletes, surfers, and bodybuilders. All of the pros I have encountered in my athletic travels have agreed. You can take your body only so far. Advancement beyond that point is a mental thing. I don't judge a snowboarder by his jumps or tricks. I watch how he carves and cuts. Too many snowboarders these days are in a rush to get into a photograph or contest. They work on what looks good, not what feels good. In the interest of becoming famous and getting sponsored, they neglect to learn how to do a perfect turn, and instead they overfocus on trick riding and jumps. The fundamental things in snowboarding are your turns and your attitude. You need good gear, technique, and training, as well as common and uncommon sense to survive in backcountry powder. Throw in a good sense of humor for all of the days it doesn't go your way, and you will love the sport as much as I do. But if you really want to excel in snowboarding, or in any high-rev form of athletics, the shape of your mind is ultimately going to be the determining factor. I snapped my snowboarding boots into their bindings. The clicks sounded solid and right. I shouldered my knapsack and prepared myself for what I anticipated to be the greatest ride of my life. And then, quite unexpectedly, I was filled with fear and dread. Images of my mangled body, freezing to death on a remote Himalayan peak, began to fill my mind. Maybe I'm not ready for this yet, I began to think. Another, deeper voice inside of me told me that I was. It wasn't so much a voice as a strong, intuitive feeling. I just knew I could pull it off, if I could just get my fear under control. So I began to use the snowboarder's mantra, no guts, no glory. I just kept repeating it over and over in my mind until my fear gradually dissipated and then finally stopped. Then I knew I was ready. I pushed off and started down. I started to cut rhythmically, keeping my mind totally focused on each cut. I didn't allow myself to think of what lay ahead of me, or to ego out on a good cut that I had just made. I brought the full power of my mind to bear on each movement I made. After a few minutes, the vertical incline started to ease back, and I switched from cutting on the powder to carving in and out of it. As the slope broadened and the vertical drop evened off into regular off-piste mountain boarding, I started to carve in long, lazy turns. Before I knew it, I was at the bottom of the mountain, alive. I felt an exhilaration that I hadn't felt since I had first started snowboarding. I had just managed to board a mountain that I didn't think I could, and I had done it fairly well. I got off my board, changed my boots, shouldered my gear, and started looking for the trail that would lead me back to the Cave of Enlightenment. I hoped that Master Fwop and the Oracle wouldn't be too pissed off that I had snuck off to go snowboarding. Since I wasn't as telepathic as they were, I knew I wouldn't find out exactly how they felt until I met them back at the cave.